for that. It's an imperfect world, and I'm a perfect example of it. Anyway, um, today the book I'm going to share with you and the training I'm going to share with you is some stuff that when I read it, it just blew my mind. It was really a fascinating study on how we get ourselves to do the things, why we do what we do, and then how we can make ourselves do the things we really want ourselves. We all say, well, I want to do this, I want to work out, I want to diet, I want to do this, I want that. And, I want to study, I want to do more of this, I want to be more, whatever you want to do for yourself. And it always ends up that you sort of get stuck in that rut. Well, the rut is your brain, and your brain is processing trillions of bits of information. And so in order to deal with that, what it does is it creates patterns for everything. And those patterns, that's all your brain does is create a pattern. Nothing in your life is anything but a pattern. Your brain creates it, like it sort of assembles it in front of yourself. And so, you know what? For this one, I feel kind of today. I think that I will. I'm going to go to San Francisco. What do you think, Amber? San Francisco? Do a little traveling.
Nice, yeah.
San Francisco's nicest time of year. All right, let's do San Francisco. So, your brain creates, it essentially assembles your world and creates it in front of you, because it couldn't process the trillions of bit of information that come at it if it didn't come up with high-speed waves. When they talk about hardwiring your brain, creating habits, creating situations that your brain can't get past. That's what it does. And so they've been trying to study that, and brain science has been studying it forever. And they've made some breakthroughs. And this book by Charles Duhigg, which is called
Power of Habit.
Power of Habit. Thank you. God. I was thinking faster, better, smarter. Power of Habit. They really did an amazing job of studying that. Now, do I have to open this up, or do you?
I can. I already have it ready.
Did you? All right. Well, can you share that with the rest of us? Share that with me anyway. I don't have to look at me. I don't even like looking at me. There we go. Okay.
Good? All right.
That's fantastic. Okay. So, and I strongly urge you to read this book. And the reason is, if you ever want to get to understand why you do how you do things, you go, what the hell did I do that for? Why do I keep going back and doing the things I don't want to do? This explains it. And it explains that there's a very, very, very straightforward process that you use to get your brain to do what you want. And I was doing it for a while, and I did great. And then the problem is the habits that you create, you can override them, but they're always there, So if you don't keep the override going, you lose out on that. But anyway, so this is The Power of Habit. It's by Charles Duhigg. It's a yellow and orange. I don't know if anybody can see me on there. Hold on. Where's my book? There it is. This is the book. Can you see that? Habit? Is that straight? Is that backwards for you? It's backwards for me.
It looks good.
Okay. So this is the book called The Power of Habit. And it's a fairly easy read. It's a real enjoyable read. And it's kind of inspirational too. So I would urge you to read it, just like all the books that we've reviewed here, because they're good to have it as a part of your intellectual repertoire, if you will. So the book is Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, and let's review what we learned from this. A habit is a deliberate decision we make at one time, then stop thinking about and continue repeating them. And once you become aware that everything you do is a habit, you're going to start seeing that you have habits. You do the same things in the same situation every time. What you eat, where you go, how you drive your car. The way you deal with your kids, the way you deal with your spouse, everything is a habit. And that's what I said. It's hard to remove habits because it's an encoded neural pathway and will never go away. That's what I just said. Your habits, good and bad, are all in there. That's why you got to nurture the good ones and fight the bad ones. 40 to 45% of daily decisions are habits. When you think you're making a reasoned, rational decision, almost half the time, and almost every time it's driven by some part of a habit, but sometimes it's a completely habit. Your decision is completely habitual. With rats and chocolate. Okay, this is kind of interesting. So they started checking with rats, and they started doing it's kind of like what is it? What's the rat where they fed the rat? It's I have my brain blocked there. Yeah, it's anyway. What they did was they realized that the when they started using it, they created a click, and then it would release the chocolate. Okay, so the rat go into the maze, it'd hear a click. The cue was a click, and then it would get the chocolate, right? And so what happened is it would hear the click, and then the brain, would get on defense, would start processing, and then it saw the chocolate, and woo, big spike, right? Well, what you'll see is after several rounds, it no longer had to process. It figured out this is a habit. I hear a click, I get chocolate. I'm just looking for the chocolate, right? So the brain, and even rats' brains, are always looking to reduce the workload. 100% Pavlov's dog. Thank you, my friend. 100% of the time, your brain is looking for a way to cut down the work. It's like all of us. It's why we're that way. And so once it figures something out, again, turns it into a pattern. It follows the pattern. It just does what the pattern does. And there's some amazing stories about that, which I don't remember. I mix books up because there's a lot of overlap because they're all about brain science. But keep going because I don't want to step on my own self. I can get back to that later. So that's the habit loop. A cue, a routine, which is look around in the case of the rat, it was run around looking for the chocolate, and then reward. And the cue is a situational trigger that's based on a reward you're seeking. In other words, this cue leads to the reward. When you do this, you get this, okay? The routine is whatever action you have to take to earn the reward, and then the reward is the satisfaction you seek by following the routine. And if you remember in the Febreze example where people would go through, clean their house, and then they'd spray it with the Febreze, and it was like a big smile on their face. That was from Cialdini stuff. But basically, that was about the fact that reward, when you can create a reward, the satisfaction, and a lot of times that's all reward is. It's just satisfaction. So you do something, like a lot of people who develop great habits about working out. They go work out. They get especially the long distance runners, whatever. They'll get the endorphins high, or they'll get that feeling of working out, and then they get the satisfaction of doing it. And if you do it enough times, you create that loop, that cue, do the routine. And the cue would be: I wake up, I put on my sneakers. Putting on my sneakers means that's my cue. I'm now in the workout habit. Okay. So that's what the habit loops, and it's so many things. For smokers, it's, I made a cup of coffee, I got my coffee, so I got my cigarette. Thankfully, I've never been a smoker, but that's, again, it's a habit, and that one's even followed up by reinforced by chemicals. Let's go to the next page. So craving from the cue feeds the habit loop. All right. Subconscious craving emerges, which starts the loop. The brain identifies a simple and obvious cue, like I put my sneakers on. The brain anticipates defined rewards. Now, for me, I did really, really well. I lost 75 pounds, and I lost it because I'd get up in the morning. I would immediately put on because I was working this great diet, which is called the high fast metabolism diet, which I strongly recommend to anybody if they want to use it, because it works like a charm if you do it. And then I would put on my sneakers, and then I would go out and walk 5 miles. Now that 5-mile walk, the first few times was hell, but after a while, it's what I did in the morning. And then when I got home, I always felt great. And I put on my clothes and they'd be loose, and I'd feel good. And that was the reward, the satisfaction I got. And that really kept me on the diet, kept me from cheating, because I was So it was part of that was I wanted that, I craved that feeling that I got every morning, right? And the habit emerges when you see the cue and the craving begins. It is not instantaneous. You have to develop that. It wasn't the first time I walked. It wasn't put on my sneakers and go. It wasn't put on my sneakers and go. It was only when I'd done it for 3 or 4 weeks that I really felt like every morning I just woke up. I was a guy who walked. That was what I did. So the reward helps the brain figure out if a habit is worth remembering, which is why you have to reward yourself when you do good things. Reward doesn't always have to mean a chocolate sundae, but it can be other things too. But if you're dieting anyway. So that's the cue. So to the next page. Some habits are good for us. Habits emerge because the brain is constantly finding a way to conserve efforts and energy. Brain doesn't want to work, like I said. An efficient brain stops thinking about basic behaviors and devotes energy to creativity and invention. This is why, if you ever look at some of the highest achievers, they remove so many things and turn them deliberately into habits. Many high achievers, Steve Jobs, a perfect example. If you ever saw him, he always wore black. There was no decisions there. One of the great investment managers whose name escapes me now, this was back in the 80s and 90s. He ran Magellan funds, I think. But anyway, he ate the same exact food every morning and breakfast and lunch, so he didn't have to. There was no thought process involved, and wore a very small wardrobe. There was very few decisions he made. He saved all of his brain work for working on his investments. That's what he did. If a brain does not need to think about getting ready for work, eating breakfast, driving to work, so there it is. It can now focus on the big project that lies ahead at work and strategies to complete the project well and on time. If you want to be a high-performing person, develop as many very positive habits that drive what you do every day. There are certain you can create a menu of foods. You can make your closet. I was just the other day. I was seeing that some of these guys are real high performance. These guys are making tens of millions of dollars a year, and they're trying to simplify their lives and give themselves a lot more freedom. And one of the first things they do is they cut their wardrobe down to everything matches. Their wardrobe is like 4 different things, and it all matches. So no matter what they put on, just put on whatever's there and go. No decisions needed. And that's kind of extreme, but these people are at the point in their lives where they really, Einstein wore the same. But when you have that kind of focus, when you are that driven to be high production, high productivity, and highly in tune, those kinds of habits can do a lot of good. And again, you have to develop the habits, and we're going to be talking about how to do that. Did we get into here at all about the girl who did this stuff? Did you talk about the case study in this?
There was quite a few case studies, so no, I just used one of the marshmallow experiments.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about her as I remember it. I remember it pretty well. What got this started, and you read it's the first thing you read about in the book, is there was this girl whose life basically had fallen apart. It was a train wreck. Either it was divorced or her boyfriend had broken up. I think it was divorce. She got dumped. She lost her job. She was broke. She was deeply in debt. She was massively out of shape. She was a heavy smoker. All these things. Basically, she had enveloped herself in just negativity and bad habits, right? And so she decided that she wanted to go to traipse around, I think it was Egypt, but it was someplace in the middle. It was this big, it was out in the deserts. And she said, she just, for whatever reason, she set that as her, this one thing in life I want to do. My life is crap. I want to do that one thing. But to do that, she said, there's no way I can traipse around the desert if I'm a smoker, because I won't be able to keep up, So what she did, because she was trekking around it, what she did was she then focused entirely on not smoking. And she built that habit. And what happened was, as a result of that, it's called the linchpin habit, I think. Is it linchpin, is that right? We'll get to it anyway.
Keystone.
Yeah. That one habit drove her, like I said, you know what, because I got the satisfaction of the walking and that, and I had a real set habit, which I did before I even read about this. Um, I also ate better and did a lot of other things. It became much more of who I was, and it drove a lot of good habits. Um, so good and bad habits. Once a craving exists, you will behave automatically, whether good or bad, because the neurological pattern exists. If you let it go, your brain will just take you down whatever path is the least resistance to it. Okay. If the path to least resistance is to get drunk, if the path of least resistance is to, eat a bunch of crappy food, if the path of least resistance is to lay around and watch TV, that's what you're going to do. Okay. The brain can't tell the difference between good and habits. You must reroute the habit loop. You must train your brain with a cue, a routine, and a reward. Some habits are easy to change. Others demand belief before you can change. In other words, that's like smoking. You got to believe you can stop smoking, or you got to believe you got to lose weight. You got to believe all those things. And it's all true because you can see other people do it, but that's what's good. We all have good and bad habits since you cannot remove a habit. Like I said, there are literally hardwires in the brain. Your brain does everything it can to cut down work. If it can figure out, I'm going to do this over and over, okay, I'm just going to make a direct link. So if this, then that, right? Transformation comes when you focus on changing the bad habits, all right? You can change your bad habits by replacing the behavior routine and keep the same cue and reward. Whatever it is that cued you to do something before, like, if you smoked, maybe if you smoke whenever you drank a cup of coffee, maybe when you drink a cup of coffee, you go out and walk, a half mile, or go out or do, 10 push-ups at your desk or whatever, just something else. And the reward is going to be satisfaction, right? You can also turn any routine to a habit, creating new positive habits at any time. If you do something, or if you want to do something repeatedly, you just have to create a cue, work the routine, and then reward yourself. And sometimes, like I said, the reward sometimes is nothing more than my physical reward, honestly, was when I went into my closet and tried my clothes on that had always been too tight, and all of a sudden they were loose. That's anybody who's lost weight knows that's a endorphin high right there. So habits are stronger than physical addictions. Nicotine stays in your system for 1 to 3 days. It takes much longer to stop smoking and replace the behavior. So your addiction to nicotine is hell for 3 days, but after that, you're fighting only the habit, right? AA meetings have social support and genuine rewards. You get to stand up, you get to talk, everybody claps for you, you feel good about yourself. That's a reward. That's what you do. And it gives you that. And remember, it's the belief. If Joe can stop drinking and come to meetings, then I can do it. I've got 3 brothers who are alcoholics. You're always an alcoholic. 2 of them have been dry for years and years and years because they embraced that. My one brother, who thinks it's all hooey, of course, is still drinking and will probably die early as a result of that. And it's a tragic thing, but it is what it is. Next page, please. So Keystone, I said Keystone, not linchpin. Keystone habits allow you they sort of change who you are and how you see yourself and the way your brain, and the way you comport yourself, right? And it's used as a method to strengthen willpower. It's built around your cultures and values. You value being healthy. You value being there for your family. You value, sobriety. You value education and learning, or you value, that. And it's a platform for the change and opportunities for small wins. You have to be able to keep winning. Like I said, my small win, every single day I got the small win when I was dieting. I got home. I got to see the change on the weight. The scale didn't always say less weight, right? Because anyone who's dieted know that water comes up and you go up and down. But the clothes always told the truth, right? That what always did it. So if you change keystone habits by looking for the inflection points. Willpower is like a muscle, and it strengthens through practice. I don't think that's a secret to anybody. The more habitualized you do, the more room there is for willpower, okay? The more you're habitualizing. If you turn things into a habit, it reduces the amount of willpower, and you have more willpower to use because your brain isn't used up on doing the habit. So willpower can be taught by changing habits. That's what worked for the girl who stopped smoking. Fast forward, what was it? 1 year? It wasn't very long. She was in Egypt. She was doing the trip. Now, what was funny was she was actually doing it in an air-conditioned coach and everything, so she didn't really have it. But she'd gotten in great shape. She was doing, advanced yoga. She'd gotten a great new job. She had resolved all her debt. She had a fiance. Life was going great. Okay. The example of the marshmallow experiment. I'm trying to. Did you write that out? Yeah.
This is when they put little children in a room with one of those big marshmallows in front of them, and they said, if you can sit here for 2 minutes without touching the marshmallow, we'll give you another one. And it was hilarious watching. You can Google it, and the kids are just tormenting themselves, and some of them just couldn't do it. As it said, only 30% of the children could have enough willpower to get the second marshmallow. So it was just a little example about willpower.
Yeah, we're and by the way, we're all little kids. Let's be honest. So so willpower. You have to create the habits so that your willpower will be strengthened because there's more room for it. Belief is critical for changing bad habits. Like I said, you have. That's why the thing about that's why at AA meetings everybody gets up, says, "Hi, I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober for however long." Okay, that is it can be done. Each person states that. That's 10 social proof examples. That's 15. That's 20. However many social proof examples it is. That's when you start going, it can be done. And then when they say, and the reason they tell their story about how bad it was is so you can say, oh God, he was way worse than me. And he got sober. I can get sober, right? Belief is what helps you make it through periods of doubt. If not, the change of habit will not happen. So if you want to do something, do whatever it takes to convince yourself intellectually to believe that it can happen. All right. And I am a strong, strong proponent in whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. So I think that we are all capable of vastly more than we give ourselves credit for. There's a great little video of a football coach, and I don't remember where I saw this. I've watched it 3 or 4 times. It's a great little video. But this football coach has this star student on his team, and he doesn't. The star student, he's I was a star athlete, not student. He might be a star student, but he's a star athlete, and he wants this kid to be a leader and to believe in himself. And so the kid, he's kind of, he's a star, so he's kind of screwing off and everything. And he wanted to do something that wasn't, sort of not what the coach wanted. The coach says, all right, if you will do, and I don't know what they call it, when you walk in your hands and feet, your 4-legged walk with someone on your back. And he said, if you'll give me your very best carrying whatever his name was, the kid on his back, I'll let you go. But you got to give me your very best. You have your word, have your word, have your word. He said, and now I want you to do it blindfolded. And he said, but you got to get to the 50-yard line. And so he goes, okay. He had this kid do this, and the whole time rooting him. And at the end of it, the kid didn't just get the 50-yard line. He went all the way to the end zone. And then what the coach said is, don't ever doubt yourself again. Nobody believed it could be done. And, he did it with the kid in his back. And it's a testimony. I love that video because it's such a great testimony to the fact that, when we find ourselves in situations where we need to be great, particularly if it involves our children or families or, some crisis, most of us will rise to that and become what we're capable of being. And so, I would submit to you that believe in yourself and you'll not be disappointed. Keystone Habits supply small wins that let us know bigger achievements are within our reach. 8 hours of sleep is positive effects in your career. If you get your sleep, your body will be rewarded. That's a cue. That's a habit. That reward is you wake up refreshed. You wake up clear-headed. You get to be productive at work, and work is a lot simpler. Keep going. Next. Willpower is the single most important factor in individual success. That is, and the best way to strengthen your willpower is to make a habit of it. Complete the hardest and most creative task first each day, then more tedious routine tasks can follow to be more productive. What does they say? Eat the crust first, right? That's it. When you have pie, eat the crust first because the good stuff's in the middle. Get the hard part out of the way. And it's amazing how we've all had that. That's kind of the miracle of the day before vacation, right? The day before vacation, when you walk in and in order to leave, you got to finish all this stuff. You don't screw around. You immediately jump on all the most important things because they got to get done. Therefore, you got to do it. And in that one day, typically you get 4 or 5 days work done. You accomplish the hell out of it. And the reason is you don't have time to screw around. You have to do the big deals, right? You have to get the big stuff done. And, the things that have been challenging you, the things that have been, that you've been avoiding, that you've been sort of afraid of, like make that phone call, close that deal. This deal is going to happen or it's not. If you don't do it before you go, you're going to lose it. And so many deals get closed and done, and so many things get finished the day before vacation. And this is why. Eat that frog. Wow, that was a funny guy. To make willpower a habit, identify a behavior ahead of time and create a new routine. Routine create organizational memory. Okay, when you do that for an organization, if you want your organization to do things, you create routines, and a lot of the time they call them process maps and things like that. If you want your company, and that's sort of what you do for yourself. You say, "This is my process for," and this was what my process for getting going in the morning was: get up, take a walk, do a shower, put your clothes on, all that stuff. So routines create that memory, and in organizations, it does the same thing. It replaces willpower. People just do it the way it's supposed to be done. Okay, so here's the framework for changing a habit. So you have a habit, typically not a good one. You have to identify what causes it, right? And one of the things they do, like if you're trying to quit smoking, they'll say, "When do you smoke? What causes you to smoke? Is it stress? Is it meetings? Are you with people? Is it where you are? Is it what you're doing?" They look at that. And then they figure out, you identify what you do the routine that creates that bad habit. So in this case, it's smoking. So you experiment with rewards, right? You figure out how you can reward yourself for not smoking. All right. And then you isolate the cue. The cue is the cue is I pour a cup of coffee. The cue is I sit down at a bar, have a beer, maybe every beverage I have, I pull up a cigarette. And then you really have to have a plan, because you have to. It's funny. We speak into reality our lives. Our lives are spoken about either internally, right? Your self-talk, or your external talk. It's very powerful to talk to yourself. I don't think that's part of this book, but I will tell you that if you make a habit of telling yourself things out loud, the things you say to yourself out loud, your brain will believe. Your brain will go along with it. So tell yourself, it's like, so many things are better if you say them out loud. If you're writing a communication to somebody, you should always read it out loud, because you will find when you go through it, oops, that needs to be tuned, that needs to be tuned. A lot of times I can fix an email or a communication or a marketing piece or anything just because I read it out loud and go, that doesn't sound right. It doesn't require anything more than that. So I would encourage you to do that. Is there anything you want to add to this, Amber?
Nope, we're about to go into more detail.
Okay, good. There it is.
Yep.
Identify the routine, just like I said before. It's a cue. There's a routine and a reward. And we talked about that. To understand your own habits, you need to identify the components of your loops. Once you have diagnosed the habit loop of a particular behavior, you can look for ways to supplant old vices with new routines. Again, instead of lighting up a cigarette, maybe you crunch on some celery. Maybe you get up and take a walk. Maybe you do whatever. But you have to identify the routine. The routine is the most obvious aspect. It's the behavior you want to change. Any behavior you want to change is the routine you don't want to do. If you find yourself pulling into Dunkin' Donuts every morning and getting a Kreller, that's the habit you want. You got to come up with a better routine, something better than that. I don't do that, by the way. I don't even like Corellas. I just threw that out there. All I can think of was cops. So step 2 is experiment with rewards. All right. Rewards are powerful because they satisfy cravings. Our bodies, our brains crave reward. We want recognition. We want satisfaction. We want to be happy. But we're often not conscious of the cravings that drive our behaviors. We don't know what it is. It's not like it's quite so obvious. It's not like being hungry or something like that. It's just like our brain wants a reward for something, and the reward is oh, I got this. Oh, I stopped. I even if it's a bad behavior, if there's a reward at the end of it, it's going to keep doing it. To figure out which cravings are drawing particular habits, it's useful to experiment with different rewards. It might take a few days or a week or longer. During that period, you shouldn't feel any pressure to make a real change, thinking of yourself as a scientist in the data collection stage. In other words, you are your own petri dish. You are your own experiment. You need to sit there and diagnose yourself. Doctor, heal thyself. Look at this thing and say, what is it that I do that I don't want to do? Or what is it that I'm not doing that I want to do? And what do I do in lieu of that? And those are the things that you want to do. And you want to keep trying things, find out which things work for you and then repeat that. When you find it, if I do something. Go ahead, Amber. You look like you're ready to say something.
Yeah. So the author, Charles, gives an example of every day at 3:00, he would go up to the cafeteria and get a cookie. And he started packing on the pounds, and he was wondering, why do I get a cookie? So he wasn't hungry, and he did the experiment himself, and it really was the social reward. He went upstairs, gave himself a break, was able to chit-chat and come back down. And so he figured out that it wasn't the cookie, it wasn't the sugar, it was just the social interaction. So his routine has now changed, and all he does is get up at the same time, because that's when he's ready, and he just goes over to a colleague's desk and chit-chats, and then he goes back and he's able to work and be productive. So he's eliminated the cookie, which was the bad habit, but still kept the same reward, which was the social interaction that he was actually craving, not the cookie that he was craving. So.
Right, exactly. So no more cookies, people. That's just wrong. So as you test 4 or 5 different rewards, you can use an old trick to look for patterns. After each activity, jot down on a piece of paper the first 3 things that come to mind. All right? At the end of the experiment, when you review your notes, it'll be much easier to remember what you were thinking and feeling at that precise instant, because your scribbled words will trigger a wave of recollection. Okay? I don't know if any of you ever do this, but if my brain runs wild at night. I don't ever remember my dreams for more than a few brief fleeting seconds, but I have a lot of what I'll get is ideas in the night that actually will coalesce, and I'll wake up and go, hey, and I'll think of something. I'll come with some idea, and I always write, because it used to be I go, oh, okay, I'll have to do that tomorrow. And the next day I wake up and go, what the hell was that I wanted to do? And sometimes it'd come back, sometimes I lost it. But the fact of the matter is, you can absolutely solve your own problems if you, and this is again talking out loud, when you go to bed at night, ask yourself out loud, how am I going to whatever the problem is, just say, how am I going to solve, how am I going to do this? How am I going to make this result? Say, I need this, I need an answer for this tomorrow. And so many times you will wake up with the idea, the answer, some resolution to that. It is incredibly powerful. And by experimenting with different rewards, you can isolate what you're actually craving, which is essential in redesigning the habit. All right. Like you said, what you're actually craving was the social interaction. Again, if you say the first 3 things that came into your head, that will trigger your brain to remember where your head was at when you did that. And so you want to make sure that you understand, what it is that caused that. And so, when you look at what you're actually craving, that's going to start coming out in what you're writing down. Isolate the cue. The reason why it's so hard to identify the cues that trigger our habits is because there's too much information bombarding us as our behaviors unfold. It took a long time for me to figure out what it was that made me do the good stuff. And I still don't figure out what makes me do the bad stuff. I Don't know, but for whatever it is, I've identified a few things, but it's just, it seems like, well, I just decided to do that. No, you didn't. You did it for a reason. You did it. It's a habit that you have, right? To identify cue amid the noise, identify categories of behavior ahead of time to scrutinize in order to see patterns. And these are the things you want to look at. Where you are, the time of day, the 3 o'clock cookie, emotional state. Every time I get stressed, I drink. Or every time I get happy, I drink. For me, it's if I'm sad, I eat. If I'm happy, I eat. If I'm lonely, I eat. If I'm with people, I eat. Eating is my reward. Other people bring out the best or worst in you, right? And then whatever it was you do just before it happens. So all those things can be triggers, and other things can be triggers too. But that's the vast majority of them can be, can be identified in this. All right. So either where you are, the time, how you're feeling, who you're with, and what you were doing just before it happened. All right. So those are things, that's how you want to isolate the cues. Once you figured out your habit loop, you've identified the reward driving your behavior, the cue triggering it, and the routine itself, you can begin to shift the behavior, right? It's time to change the routine. You change to a better routine by planning for the cue. When you see the cue, go, okay, had a cup of coffee, time to get out my carrots and celery or whatever, and choosing a behavior that delivers the reward you are craving and the satisfaction is, look at me, I didn't smoke. Look at me, I'm being healthy. Look at me, what I did. And you need a plan to do that. And this is for the big changes. And here's the thing too, again, I keep wanting to say linchpin, it's not keystone. Keystone habits. If you work on your keystone habits, everything else comes along with it. The keystone habit for me was just getting that exercise, that 5-mile walk. But that keystone habit changed so much else. I was doing so many things better, including my eating exactly what I was supposed to, staying on a very rigorous diet, doing all that stuff. We learned that a habit is a choice that we deliberately make at some point. At some point, we just did it, right? We decided we wanted to do it, but then we did it enough, so we stopped thinking about it and continued doing it often every day, sometimes multiple times a day, in the case of smoking and things like that. So, your habit was a choice. You can make a new choice and just develop that new habit. Again, believing that you can is half the battle. A habit is a formula our brain automatically follows. When I see the cue, when I see that person, when I come to that place, when I, drive by the Dunkin' Donuts, when I, whatever, the routine is I go in and do that. And my reward is, maybe I go in and get to say hi to the cute little girl behind the desk and get my donut and chit chat with the people I see there every morning, and then I head out. Right. And it's amazing how fast we can get rewards out of things, right? To re-engineer that formula, we need to begin making choices again. Again, consciously saying, there's my routine, need to change that. And the easiest way to do this, according to the study after study, is to have a plan. Within psychology, these plans are known as implementation intentions. I plan to do this differently. I intend to do this in a different way. I'm going to implement that in that fashion. Obviously, changing some. What?
Right. You can go back to Cialdini, the if, then, when that he was talking about. Like, if I see this, then I do this type of thing.
Right. Exactly.
Intentions.
Yep. It's all brain science, people. Obviously, changing some habits can be more difficult, but this framework is a place to start. Sometimes change takes a long time. Sometimes it requires repeated experiments and failures. Okay. Yeah. Remember what he said earlier. When you're working on this, don't give up because the first time you tried to change it, the next day you broke it. Just go, okay, maybe that wasn't a strong enough reward. Maybe I didn't, maybe I should write things down. I just say it out loud. I need to commit to myself being what I am. Remember how consistency from Cialdini, right? If, the people that stated that, I'm for safety. I'm for driver safety. And it went from, because they said that, they ended up letting them put a huge sign in their front yard, which was just ridiculous. But to be consistent, because they stated that out loud, and that's very, very important. You must make the statement. If you state out loud that you are committed to something out loud, that's going to make a big difference. Once you understand, once you understand how a habit operates, once you diagnose the cue, the routine, and the reward, you gain power over it. So like I said, you are your own petri dish. Just get that detached One guy says a beginner's mind. You look at things going, I don't know the answers. I just want to see everything without having, figure it out the answers already. I want to look at it going, I don't know. So, teach me. That's going to be important. Okay, these are the key points to remember. Golden rule for changing habits: don't resist craving, redirect it. You're going to want what you're going to want, all right? But what you want is the reward, right? It's the routine you want to change. So when the craving starts, intend and implement an intended action, an intended sequence of behaviors, right? Routine, and then enjoy the reward that you were looking for. And that will help you change the habit. Kicking habits is hard due to rewards at the end of the habit loop. That's why you got to make sure. To end a bad habit, you replace the new routine. Keystone habits can help you form other habits. That I cannot stress to you that, and that was great about the example. If you read the book, really is inspirational. She just really got her head around it and changed things. All right. Denying rewards without replacing them makes people frustrated. Okay. If your reward is, the sugar high or whatever, the cookie, and you think it is, but it's not really, that's just a routine. You need to replace a reward with something, because it's just, you're going to be unhappy. If you used to get, every day I got to do this and my brain wanted that. I wanted it. I craved it, but I don't give it. That's not going to do you any good. Craving can also work to reinforce good habits. We had a couple of works in there. Small wins are important because they create an impetus behind habit change. Again, just watching the clothes get a little bit looser. Oh, this pair of pants that I couldn't even get on now I can get on. Now it's getting looser. Now that little stuff makes a big difference. And by the way, when I bought myself stuff, as I get, being able to say, oh, now my neck's this side and it's got smaller and smaller, right? Willpower is a finite resource. You do not have unlimited willpower. You want to take as much weight off your willpower muscle, as much burden off it, and create the habits that replace the willpower. And all habits form a cue, routine, reward loop. Everything you do that is a habit, good and bad, has a cue, routine, reward. What key habit will help you thrive? The brain. Our brains are constantly looking to save effort. Where did you get this one? Is this from the back of the book or something?
No, some lovely person made it online and shared it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's just everything we've talked about in a more visual. It's
an infographic, yes. And as you know, guys, all these nice things that Amber puts together are available to you to download and keep around to look through and remind yourself. But like you see, there it is. Brain's looking to save the effort, and because it wants to work on other stuff. It chunks sequences and actions. It said this is if then else. If this happens, then I do that, or otherwise I do something else. Right? It's an automatic routine, and the brain saves energy. Habits at work, like I said, the coffee, the smoking, the routine, all those things. Craving, automatic behavior, time of day, feeling or thought, people, cravings reinforce habits. We start craving that reward, that feeling, whatever it is, the nicotine high, the social interaction, what it is. Sometimes, and by the way, it's not unusual for some of the most powerful habits to have multiple rewards. Okay? Think about that when you're rewarding yourself for the good stuff. All right? Maybe you give yourself more than just one reward. Maybe you give yourself multiple things. The golden rule of habit change is to change the routine. The cue is going to be there. It's probably just your living, right? The reward is what you want to keep. You want to keep if it's the same, if it's possible to keep it the same. If the reward is a nicotine high, you might have to do something else. But and it is essential that you believe you can do it. And as I've always, as I say, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. All right. Then organizational habits. Organizations have habits too. They're often called routines. The keystone habit is we have a meeting, and when we have a meeting, all these things happen, and it wastes a lot of time, and it does this, that, and the other. to encourage widespread change in organizations, you have to, what's that say? Make small what?
Produce small
Win.
wins,
Yeah.
create structures, create culture that helps people thrive.
Right. So organizational habits are driven by individual habits, right? So what we teach people to do, what we reward them for, it's kind of like they're the businesses that thought for a long time that the people that worked, 16, 12, 13, 14 hours a day, that was a great thing. Discovered that those people, their reward was, they got recognized for being hard workers, but they weren't productive because their brains were fried. What they were was busy wheel spinners, and they rewarded the wrong thing. So people started thinking that, and the whole organization can be pulled down. Organization's much better off if people are taught to be productive and they're rewarded for productivity, not for attendance. It's like where companies promote people just because someone's been there a long time rather than on merit, right? That's a bad idea. That's a bad habit. That's a bad organizational habit. And when you do that, the reward, the reward is bad. So it's the wrong answer. If you want people to develop the habit of being productive, you reward that habit. What do they say? If you want more of something, reward it. If you want less of something, punish it. They're not really talking about punishing here, but rewards certainly matter. And that is the essence of it. I mean, it really is cue, routine, habit. Cue, routine, reward. You just got to identify them. I thought that this was just, and the next one we're going to do is actually about, the whole smarter, better, faster is about how to implement this knowledge and this process in organizations. So we'll cover that one next. And it'll help you turn your organization into a better running organization. Maybe that's your family. Maybe it's just people you work with, whoever you got work for you. Have you conducted a review on? All right, let me see what Lyle's asking about here. I have to look at the chat. Dun, dun, dun. I have conducted a review on Cialdini's books.
Yeah, we've done 4 different trainings, Lyle.
Yeah, so
they're all on the master training page that you have access to.
Yep. Does anybody have any questions? Or I tell you what would be cool. I'll tell you, I'm going to make a statement here. I want to implement this, get back to doing what I was doing. I need to get back to doing what I was doing. My good friend, Jeff Kasher, who's a great friend, has ragged me badly for putting my weight back on, putting a lot of the weight back on. And I love him for doing that. So I want to state my intention to do the walking and the whole process and get back on that excellent eating program, because I feel better, and it's ridiculous. The rewards for that are huge. I feel better in every way. I sleep better. My pain goes down. Inflation, my sort of inflation, I guess it's inflation, but inflammation reduces. And so to you folks, this is one of those things, stating it out loud. I want to do that. Does anybody else want to make talk about a habit they want to develop? I don't necessarily care about what you want to get rid of, but does anybody want to develop a habit that they want to reinforce? Anybody want to share that with us? It's kind of I know it's sort of off the cuff, but anyone? Bueller's
here. I'm not seeing any raised hands.
There we go. Out of bed by 5 a.m. every morning. That actually is it. It is a.
That's good.
Yep. There's to that point, Dave. There are some really great studies that show that a level of that success to a large extent can be tracked by when you get up in the morning, right? To getting to success. Now, once you're really successful, you may not get up till later, but that's a good thing.
Yes, 8 hours, Dave. 8 hours.
Yeah.
I go to bed early.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. So that's a great one, Dave. Thanks for sharing that. Working out obviously is a great habit to develop. And again, you need to trigger yourself. You need to find a cue. If you have a cue that makes you do something bad, like the cue that makes you go sit in your chair and get a bowl of chips, turn that into the cue that makes you get up and go lift a few weights or whatever. That's pretty cool stuff. Anyway, all right. Well, I was just wondering if anybody wanted to share anything. I would like to support you. If we can support you in that, if you do want to share something, or you want to change a habit, we'd love to support you in any way that we can. I hope that this was helpful to you. I can tell you that it really, really works. Honest to God, it is a major, when you harness this knowledge, and again, it's got to be an intended implementation. You have to mean to do it. You have to believe you can do it. But when you do that, it has incredible benefits. And you're never too old, for those of us who are old, you're never too old to learn new habits and create new habits. So, that's what I would suggest. Give yourself some thought. This is all for you. This is a treat for you. So give it a shot, guys. Anyway, appreciate y'all being here. Good talking to you, and we look forward to talking to you next week. Take care, guys.
Bye, guys.